All right, for this next part, you're going to need three things. You're going to need your completed population ecology sheet. This was your planning guide from the last assignment. You're going to need that. You're going to need something that you're going to be creating your model on. So that could be a Word document, which is what I would recommend, or if you have another online program where you can do something similar to this, that's fine also. You can do this by hand. However, if you're going to do that, what I would strongly suggest is that first you like cut out, do like cutouts of your different critters, and then you start figuring out your lines before you draw anything, because you're probably going to have to move things around, and you'll see why as I go through this. And then you'll also need to have Canvas open, because on the assignment page for this, you will see this information. So in here it's a Word document, but for you guys, it's actually going to be on Canvas itself, because it's going to tell you your color key for how you're going to be completing your model. So model, once again, is shows us all the components in the ecosystem. It's not just restricted to the predator-prey relationship that you did in your Arizona food web. So in this instance, one of the big things that makes it a model as opposed to a food web is that it has the abiotic characteristics. And it also shows the other relationships other than just feeding relationships. So we want to make sure that we have all of our abiotic factors on our model. So I have the sun and the ground, and I will add in the water. So the way that you add a text box in Word, if you're not familiar, is you come up here to Insert and then to Text. And if you have your screen wider, then these kind of space out a little bit, but it'll still be under text. And you have the text box. It's very similar to this in Google Docs as well. So then we will put it in water. Now, from the directions on the page where you downloaded your documents from, you'll see that it gave you some assumptions that we're going to operate underneath. And some of those assumptions are that, first of all, everything requires the sun to survive. So we're not going to include the sun for every single thing, because our food web, or our model, excuse me, would get crazy if we were to do that. The same thing with the ground. So we're going to assume that all four-legged critters walk on the ground, and we're not going to attach them to the ground, because once again, the lines would get really crazy. We want to really show those true relationships that are required. So the same thing for water. Everything needs to drink water to survive, but we're only going to put the things that actually live in the water, have part of their life cycle in the water. Those are the only thing we're going to attach to water. So things like fish, um, things like mosquitoes, where they have their larvae live, they lay their eggs in the water, and then their larvae live in the water, or frogs, where they have part of their life cycle in the water and part of it outside of the water. Those things we're going to attach to water. But if you just need to drink it, we're not going to attach it. We're going to assume that everything needs to have water to survive, but we're going to look at it as more as like habitat. So we're going to look at your completed sheet. And once again, I just have the example that I had from the last video. So we're going to work off of this. And so we're going to do some connections for the balsam fir. So on my direction sheet, which once again, this is going to be in Canvas for you, it says that we're going to show if it's a relationship between an abiotic factor and a biotic factor, it should be red. So our first, sorry, my screen went a little crazy on me there. Our first relationships that we're going to show are the balsam fir with some abiotic factors. So the sun is where the balsam fir gets its energy from. And so we are going to use an arrow to show that. Because energy is moving, we are going to use an arrow. And it's going to be red because it's going between an abiotic factor and a biotic factor. Now, if you're not sure how to make an arrow or to draw a line like this, you come up here to Insert and Shapes, and that's where you're going to find your arrows at. And then you can change your color and everything. So if you double click on your arrow, you'll have this little pencil with a box next to it, and then you can change your color. So once again, it's not identical to this on the on Google Docs, but it's close to it. So another abiotic factor that the balsam fir has a relationship with is the ground. Because it is a plant, it puts its roots down into the ground. We are going to use a line to connect it. Now, no energy flows from the ground to the balsam fir. So you'll notice that there's no arrow on my line at this point. It just has straight ends to it. Because it's not a feeding relationship, it's just a abiotic relationship. So we're going to, let's see if we can make our arrow. shows up a little bit better. So that's our abiotic relationships. While the balsam fir does need water in order to survive, it's not sitting in water. It doesn't root in water, and so we're not going to connect it to water. We do know though that it needs water to survive. So our next relationship that we're going to look at is between the balsam fir and the moose. So the moose eats the balsam fir, which means that energy is going from the balsam fir to the moose. Once again, it's super important that you have your arrows pointed in the right direction because it's showing the direction of energy flow. The red squirrel also eats the balsam fir, and so we're going to connect it with a green arrow as well. I'm using green because over here on my directions, it says that lines or arrows that demonstrate an herbivore consuming a producer should be in green. So I'm using my color key over here on my directions, which once again for you will be in Canvas. And so that's why I use green here. Now, the black-throated warbler, if we go back over to our sheet here, does not eat the balsam fir. So it's not taking anything from it, so it's not hurting it. And it's not spreading seeds, so it's not doing anything good for it. It does get a place to live, okay, so the warbler does. So it's getting something out of the relationship. But even though it's not getting food, it's getting something out of the relationship. So it would be a commensalism relationship because one is getting benefited, the warbler, and the other one's not being helped or harmed, so nothing's happening to the tree. And so lines or arrows that demonstrate commensalism should be in blue. Once again, there's no energy flowing between the balsam fir and the black-throated warbler. And so my line does not have arrows on it. It ends, a dead end, right? In the straight ends like that. So this is part of what what your model would look like. So you have a whole bunch of organisms on your sheet that all need to go into the same thing. So what does that mean to you as far as like organization is concerned? Well, for one thing, your font size probably can't be as big as mine. I did mine a little bit larger so that you could see it more easily, but you're probably going to want to use a smaller font size. It also means that you're going to have to spread things out kind of strategically. One of the benefits of doing this with the computer is that if I decide that the balsam fir really wasn't a good idea to have it over there, I can move it over here and then I can drag my lines and I can kind of move things around. If I'm doing it with pencil paper and I'm doing all this by hand, that could get kind of frustrating. And so that's why I was saying that if you're going to do this by hand, take little, make little squares of paper or something like that and kind of set them out and then kind of figure out where your lines are going to go from that point so that you can kind of move things around kind of like we would on the computer to make everything fit. It is super important that I can read your work. You can't have lines like crossing over the top. You can't have it going through the balsam fir to get to something else because then I can't follow your lines. And if I can't follow your lines, then I can't give you the score that you might have otherwise earned because I won't be able to read it. I have to be able to read your work. The other really important thing is these arrows. Make sure that only ones that are showing a feeding relationship where energy is moving have the arrows on it. Everything else should end in straight lines. And make sure that you're using the color key that's over here in the directions that'll be in Canvas. You will use all of these colors, every single one of them. So make sure that if you get to the end of it and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't use yellow, well, then you did something wrong. You need to go back and figure out what relationship you're missing. Now, what I also want you to notice is that the balsam fir is in more than one kind of relationship with other organisms. So in one sense, it is in a feeding relationship, right? It's getting eaten by the moose. It's also in a commensalism relationship. So not all the line colors are going to be the same attaching to one single organism. You can see there's lots of different colors here attached to the balsam fir. Once you've finished with your model and you've got everything all set up and you've drawn all your lines and everything is nice and neat, and you can read it, then you're going to want to save your document and submit it in Canvas. If you used a program that wasn't Word, you need to make sure that you can either save it in a PDF file or you can take a screenshot of it where you can submit it all at once. Everything does need to be in one document or one picture, and it needs to be on one page. You can't have it on several different pages. I need to be able to look at your entire model all at one time.